Greetings, YouTube. If you clicked on this video in the future, you may be wondering, what's the significance of Friday, September 18th, 2020? Well, hopefully I answer your question regardless of when you click on this of what Mastery cores to invest in, because Mastery cores are some of the most expensive items still in Marvel Contest of Champions, and it remains true that it is the best investment for units, especially for beginning to middle tier players. Instead of throwing your units at RNG crystal gambles in the Marvel Casino of Champions, they're often going to give you 2 stars for premiums or trash 4 stars, even 5 stars, heck, 6 stars, etc. Mastery cores are guaranteed value. Once you unlock that mastery, yes, if you reset your masteries, it takes a couple units to get that back, but you don't have to invest any more cores in that point. Now, of course, if let's say you unlock Glass Cannon, for every additional level of Glass Cannon, you're going to need more mastery cores. So that works out. But as a reminder, because I get this question all the time, once you unlock it, you do have to pay a small amount of units. I think it's up to like 5 or 6 for the most expensive ones per level or the final level, but you don't have to put the cores back in. So that's really nice. But it's special today because we saw an A+ deal come back in only the couple of second or third time this year. The Mastery Booster Pack, which does give you 4 Stony Mastery cores and most importantly 3 Carb Mastery cores. So we are now going to discuss the best Mastery setup or the best Mastery points to invest your cores in for the money. Now, I'm going to say this off the top. My Mastery looks a lot different than your Mastery setup maybe. If you do Alliance War and your Alliance really cares about not having your defenders take recoil damage, especially those mini bosses and final boss, for purposes of losing Alliance Wars, essentially. Now, some alliances don't care. When I used to do Alliance War in this alliance, my alliance leader said, shoot, I don't care if we lose it, go for it. And I really appreciated that. But some, it's grounds for being kicked out if you don't tell your alliance leader that you have suicide masteries on when you place defenders. So, needless to say, I can tell you what I have because I mainly do the arena and I mainly do questing, including alliance quest. But that's a completely different strategy than a lot of players. And so don't just look at my setup and think, well, I've got to copy profs, because it may not be the best setup for your situation. Now, with that being said, I think there are certain masteries that regardless of what setup you want to unlock. I still am a huge believer, given how many bleed champs there are in this game, that you should at least get deep wounds to 3 out of 5. I'm a huge believer that you should get at least 1 point in Despair, and if you use somebody like Void, you should strongly consider maxing it out. And then Katie Candy, actually, my Battle Realm bestie, helped convince me that you really need 2 out of 5 in Assassin, and that's it. And there's something called Diminishing Returns mathematically once you get past 2 points, where it really doesn't make it worth it. I wish I'd known that, because I invested a ton of cores into maxing it out, and you can see that I have a rank up of 6 units in order to make this actually 3 out of 5, but I don't have any mastery points left, so it doesn't matter. I couldn't do that anyway. I do have a full mastery setup. Let me say, I would strongly recommend spinning cores to max out cruelty, to get precision to 4 out of 5, and glass cannon 3 out of 3. It is technically not a suicide mastery because you don't lose on this recoil damage if you max glass cannon. And every single player, from the beginners to especially the endgame players, should max out glass cannon. I'm a huge proponent of that. I'm also a huge proponent of really discussing, once you're trying to push yourself to become Cavalier, and maybe you clicked on this video because you're looking to become Cavalier. I can't tell you how many potions, revives, units, etc. I saved by having willpower maxed in Act 6. There are just certain nodes where you are going to heal back up more if you fight well by the end of the fight than at the beginning, and you could not do that without the help of willpower. And I have done not just the maximum of willpower, but I've even maximized Coagulate, because so many of the champions I use, especially champs like Blade, don't have bleed immunity, and they lose a lot of health at the beginning of the fight because of full suicide mastery. So 30% less damage means I'm not going to lose as much health. I can build up my power bar for Blade, which, yes, some people say Blade is yesterday's news. Why do you talk about him? I use him every day. So for my purposes, he is still an MVP for my questing team. Besides that, this is just a general setup for the max of arena points. You get a pretty good boost for 2 out of 5 on stand your ground. Plus, I like to bait heavies, and sometimes I don't dash back quick enough, and so that kind of saves me. I prefer 4 out of 4 in block proficiency, and then 3 out of 3 in salve. This is one of the most debated moves of my mastery tree that some of you out there will say, Prof, why are you doing it? I still like that little bit more of health recovery, and because you need, 15 points in the defensive tree before you can unlock willpower. I might as well put him in there. Now, I'll say this. If you needed 13 points to unlock willpower, I'd probably move this down to 1 out of 3 and put the 2 points somewhere else. But because you need that allotment of points, I have it in there. And then besides that, proficiencies is by far the weakest part of my setup. I truly believe that I have not noticed a major change from taking parry from 3 out of 3 to 1 out of 3. Yes, there are certain fights where maybe it screws me over, especially in those bigger boss fights of Alliance Quest. But, overall, I'd rather have the only thing maxed here be Stupefy with that max stun debuff duration. And then on top of that, I really only believe you need 1 out of 3 in Dexterity. Now, if I had 2 out of 3 of those salve points, what I would do is I would actually invest in a couple of masteries that people always get on to me for not talking about because I don't have anything in them, and I totally get that. So let's discuss briefly that it is nice to have Petrify and Pacify, at least 1 out of 3 in them. I've just chosen to sacrifice those 2 points in order to max out Coagulate. It is a calculated risk on my part because of how many champions I use on offense that are not bleed immune. But again, I get if you want to do something different. This is what has worked for me, but I cannot emphasize this enough. What works for me may not work for you. I also want to point out that this is one of the coolest masteries, Mystic Dispersion, even after the rework. And if you use somebody like a Sim Supreme or even Dr. Doom, you may want to throw some points in it. The only time I've used this, speaking of Dr. Doom, in the last few years was my Abyss completion run, and that was partially with the advice of my MCOC Yoda best friend, Mr. Triumphant. Always cannot give that guy enough shout-outs for all the help he's given me in advice. So, defensive tree. I max out willpower. I truly think if you want to push to become Cavalier and save some units, you should at least put 1 point in willpower, if not 2 or 3. That is the best advice I can give you on that end. And then offensively, it's all about, if you're an arena grinder, you will be amazed how many more points you will get by maximizing your suicide roster. You'll be shocked by how much faster your arena fights will go, everywhere from the 2-star arena to the 5-star featured arena. It really is a difference. And for me, the arena is a necessary evil because I am cheap and I don't want to spend more money on this game than I have to. And so the more arena fights I can win, the more units I'll gain, the more battle chips I can gain, the more arena crystals I can open, and the more units I can get from those to further give myself free chances to purchase $100 every couple weeks worth of, say, featured Cavalier crystals, or maybe if there's a crazy great offer, particularly on the July 4th weekend or Cyber Weekend or the spring cleaning event. And then, of course, I always like to have a nice unit stash for the couple of major holidays, being the July 3rd weekend and Cyber Weekend, where you need now not just 15,000 units to purchase everything, but 18,000 units or even 21,000 units. They continue to raise the bar of the maximum that you can purchase with units, and so you can never have too many units in your inventory for those days. And yes, you can buy unit deals, but if you have a limited amount of income, you probably can't afford it. And so it's important to remember that as well, because just because you can afford something doesn't mean everybody can afford something. So there you have it, YouTube. I want to keep this video under 10 minutes, and I realize you may have to listen to this at like 0.5 speed because I've talked extremely fast, but I had a bunch of things I wanted to cover on my handy-dandy notepad next to me, and I did not want this to be a longer than necessary video. Thanks for watching, YouTube. Have a good one, and good luck in all your mastery rank-ups.